The European Union has taken strong action with a counterattack decision worth up to $27 billion targeting US goods. Is this a strategic move to help the EU maintain its economic strength, or a dangerous blow to the global economy? Trump's tariff move. In 2018, President Trump launched a strong tariff campaign, imposing a 25% tariff on steel and a 10% tariff on aluminum imports into the U.S. The main goal was to reduce the trade deficit and protect domestic industries. However, this move not only affected countries like China and Canada, but also strained the economic relationship between the U.S. and the European Union. The EU, with its strength in steel and metal exports, began to feel significant pressure from these decisions. Trump argued that this was a strategy to protect America first, but experts believe it was an interference with the principles of free trade. And when major trading partners are affected, a response was inevitable. The EU administration started calculating and preparing for the next steps. EU's $27 billion retaliation. With the US imposing tariffs on products like steel, aluminum, and agricultural goods, the EU could not stand by. Recently, the European Union announced a $27 billion retaliation package. These are not random figures, but the result of thorough research and planning by the European Commission. In this retaliation package, the EU targets iconic American products like motorcycles, wine, agricultural goods, and even technology products. These high-value items have a significant impact on U.S. businesses. This strategy is not only economic, but also a strong political message. We are not vulnerable. This means that if the U.S. does not change its policies, the EU will continue to raise tariffs on more American products. Once these measures are implemented, both economies will face unpredictable consequences, from rising prices to disruptions in global supply chains. Washington's reaction. So how will the U.S. respond to this move by the EU? The Washington administration quickly stated that the EU's tariff package would harm both sides. Some U.S. officials believe this decision could accelerate inflation and harm domestic consumers and businesses. A common viewpoint from the U.S. side is that if the EU carries out this plan, the U.S. market will be severely impacted, particularly in the agricultural and manufacturing sectors. However, these assessments were not enough to diminish the EU's resolve. As they stated, "We will not back down." The European Union emphasized that this step is necessary to promote economic independence and protect long-term interests. European leaders believe that despite facing challenges, the firm implementation of this plan will strengthen the EU's global position, EU unity, and internal concerns. Despite concerns from member countries, such as Germany and France, about the impact of the trade war on their economies, the European Union has demonstrated unity in responding to the U.S. decision. Germany, one of the largest exporters to the U.S., particularly in the automotive sector, fears it will be directly affected if U.S. tariffs continue to be imposed. However, the EU cannot allow these concerns to weaken the unity of the bloc. EU leaders have emphasized that to have strength in negotiations, they must remain united and not make concessions. All member countries understand that if the EU does not stand together, each nation will become divided and weaker. Therefore, this unity is a crucial factor in the strategy to counter the U.S. Certainly, the EU's decision has marked an important milestone in global trade relations. Is this a bold move by the EU to safeguard its interests? Or will it turn into a painful blow for both economies? Stay tuned with us in the video to learn more. Canada challenges the US. Could these bold moves change the game? 250% tariff on Canadian dairy, 50% tariff on steel and aluminum, and a $100 million contract with Starlink canceled. When Donald Trump imposed these huge tariffs on Canada, how will the country respond? Will they endure or stand up strongly to change the trade dynamics? Trump's extremely harsh measures. When Donald Trump decided to impose tariffs on Canada, he didn't just stop at ordinary tariffs. He introduced massive figures such as 250% tariffs on Canadian dairy products and 50% on steel and aluminum, aiming to increase pressure on Canada's key industries. These moves sent Canada's economy into turmoil. What impact do these actions have on both the US and Canada? Yes, with these tariffs, not only Canadian goods are affected, but US manufacturers and consumers will also be impacted as prices rise. However, can Canada just sit back and endure? The answer is no. These tariffs truly created a crisis in trade relations between the two nations. Major industries in Canada, from steel production to agriculture, are severely affected. But what happens if these tariffs not only harm Canada, but also create a wave of opposition from US consumers and businesses? Ontario's aggressive response, cutting power supplies to the US immediately after these tariffs were announced, Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, responded very aggressively. He declared that Ontario would not hesitate to cut off power supplies to the US if tensions continued. This is not an empty threat. Ontario provides about 25% of the energy to US states, particularly in the Northeast. If the province decides to cut off the energy supply, thousands of US businesses and households will face immediate difficulties. This is a powerful economic move that Canada can use to put pressure on the US. If Canada follows through with this action, the impact will not be limited to trade. It will extend to the energy sector, threatening to disrupt the daily lives of millions of Americans. And the question is, can the US endure when such a crucial part of its energy supply is cut off? Ontario cancels $100 million contract with Starlink, but Ontario didn't stop at just threatening to cut power. They decided to cancel a $100 million contract with Starlink, Elon Musk's satellite company. This contract was initially signed to provide satellite internet to remote areas of Ontario. But this decision clearly shows that Canada is not afraid to take away economic cooperation opportunities if necessary to protect its national interests. Ford didn't hesitate to criticize Musk for aligning with Trump's policies. It's ironic that Elon Musk, someone who once studied in Canada, would now take a stance against the very country that helped him. This further underscores that Ontario isn't just challenging trade policies, but also bringing economic partnerships into the equation. When Musk, who once studied in Canada, chooses to align with a policy that harms the very country that helped him, Ontario is not just canceling a contract, but sending a strong message. We are not afraid to sacrifice economic benefits if it protects our country. And the question is, will Musk face consequences from this decision? Using key minerals to apply pressure Canada isn't just using tariffs or canceling contracts to fight back. They also hold a very powerful weapon: minerals. One of the key resources Canada can use to put pressure on the US is nickel, a vital material for the US automotive and technology industries. Ontario supplies nearly half of the nickel that the US needs, and if Canada decides to limit the export of this resource, it would pose a significant challenge to the US industrial sector. Can the US cope without nickel from Canada to support its industries? Ford has emphasized that Ontario can use minerals as a strategic tool to affect the US economy. Tightening the export of these important resources will disrupt US companies, forcing America to return to the negotiating table to resolve the trade conflict. This is not just a tariff battle, but a war over strategic resources. Don't take your eyes off this, as many exciting developments are waiting for you. The shocking truth behind the chaotic White House press conference. A White House press conference has sparked widespread concerns, leaving many to wonder, what is really happening behind the scenes of this administration? The baseless conspiracy about Biden's pardons. Caroline Leavitt claimed that Biden's pardons might be invalid because they were signed using an auto pen. This is a serious allegation, but does it have any legal basis? The facts. The use of an auto pen has been common practice for years and has been used by previous presidents. There is no law stating that an auto pen signature invalidates a legal document. If this argument were valid, wouldn't it also nullify other executive orders signed in the same manner? Key questions. Why is this argument being raised now? What is the real purpose? Could this simply be a way to stir political controversy? Justifying deportations without due process. The administration is carrying out mass deportations of Venezuelans, claiming they are gang members. But where is the real issue? Lack of due process. Those being deported are not provided clear evidence proving they are criminals. When asked about the criteria used to determine gang membership, Leavitt vaguely responded with, "Intelligence and trust in law enforcement." Why this is concerning. No trial, no concrete proof, only unilateral decisions. If someone can be labeled a criminal based on mere suspicion, could this open the door for wrongful deportations in the future? Even more disturbing, the administration is producing videos of these deportations and calling them fun videos. These visuals resemble propaganda campaigns designed to showcase power rather than ensure justice. Insulting France over the Statue of Liberty. When a French politician expressed concerns that the U.S. no longer represents the values of the Statue of Liberty, Leavitt responded with an unexpected remark.
It's only because of the United States of America that the French are not speaking German right now.
Was this response necessary, or was it simply an attempt to divert attention from more pressing issues? Key questions. Should a government respond to symbolic criticisms in this manner? Is this a sign of America distancing itself from its long-standing allies? A Freudian slip about the role of the Department of Justice. In a notable moment, Caroline Leavitt unintentionally revealed something alarming. The slip of the tongue. We want to restore the Department of Justice to fight against law and order. Was this just a simple mistake, or a Freudian slip unintentionally exposing a deeper truth? Why this matters. What does it mean if the DOJ is no longer independent? Could it become a tool for political agendas rather than a protector of justice? Trump's takeover of the Kennedy Center. Another controversial move, Trump appointed himself as chairman of the Kennedy Center and replaced the entire board with his loyalists. The consequences. Major donors withdrew their support and staff resigned en masse. Several artistic programs were canceled. Key questions. Is this truly an effort to restore American culture, or is it simply an attempt to turn the arts into a political tool? Alina Habba's hypocrisy on human trafficking. Alina Habba, a key figure in the administration, boldly claimed she is fighting against human trafficking. But is this claim credible? A major contradiction. Just months ago, Habba appeared in a video praising Andrew Tate, a man accused of human trafficking and exploiting women. Can she be trusted? The bigger question, can an administration claim to combat an issue while having ties to individuals accused of being part of the problem? These events are just the beginning, or are they signs of something even more concerning? What happens next? Stay tuned. There are more shocking revelations ahead. The U.S. has maintained a 25% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum. In response, Canada imposed retaliatory tariffs worth $2.7 billion on a wide range of U.S. products, disrupting the auto industry, consumer goods, and energy sectors. What are the consequences? Rising car prices, billions lost in the U.S. coal industry, and severe supply chain disruptions. Who will bear the greater losses, Canada or the U.S.? Canada has not only responded with tariffs, but has also implemented strategic economic measures across various levels. Government of Canada's countermeasures 25% tariff on U.S. steel and aluminum, causing an estimated $1.1 billion in losses for U.S. businesses. Tariffs on sporting goods, computers, electronics, and household appliances, affecting $1.6 billion worth of U.S. exports. Actions taken by Canadian provinces. Ontario banned U.S. liquor from its government-regulated retail system, impacting major brands like Jack Daniel's and Jim Beam. Quebec prioritized domestic suppliers and government contracts, reducing reliance on U.S. imports. Alberta diversified its supply chain, seeking imports from the EU, Japan, and South Korea instead of the U.S. The goal? Reduce dependence on U.S. imports and apply economic pressure on American businesses. Can the U.S. withstand this economic squeeze? The U.S. auto industry heavily depends on Canadian steel and aluminum, and now it's facing serious setbacks. 80% of steel and aluminum used in U.S. auto manufacturing comes from Canada. Higher raw material costs could increase the price of a Ford F-150 by $400 to $600. Major U.S. automakers hit hard. Ford, facing $1.2 billion in additional costs per year if tariffs persist. General Motors, GM, expected to absorb $800 million in extra costs annually. Tesla could see car prices rise by $1,000 per unit due to increased aluminum costs. Ripple effects on supply chains. Over 10,000 jobs in Detroit's auto industry could be at risk if manufacturers are forced to cut production. Consumers will feel the impact, with rising vehicle prices potentially reducing demand and slowing the economy. If the trade war drags on, U.S. car prices could increase by 5 to 10% in 2025. One of Canada's most damaging moves was blocking U.S. coal exports through British Columbia ports, directly hitting the American coal industry. 11.7 million tons of U.S. thermal coal are exported through Canada each year, valued at over $1.5 billion. 65% of U.S. coal exports to Asia rely on Canadian ports, mainly serving China, Japan, and South Korea. Major consequences. Transportation costs could rise by at least 30% as U.S. coal companies search for alternative ports, losing market share to competitors like Australia and Indonesia, which have lower shipping costs. Montana and Wyoming economies could lose over $500 million per year due to declining coal exports. Wider economic impact. Thousands of jobs in the U.S. coal industry could be lost, particularly in Wyoming and Montana. U.S. coal companies face potential closures, leading to financial turmoil in coal-dependent regions. If Canada holds its stance, the U.S. could lose billions in coal revenue in the coming years. The U.S.-Canada trade war is inflicting heavy economic damage on both sides. The U.S. auto industry struggles with rising material costs. The U.S. coal industry is losing a critical export route to Asia. Canada is aggressively diversifying its supply chain to reduce reliance on U.S. goods. If tensions continue, the U.S. economy could lose tens of billions of dollars in 2025. Who do you think will suffer more, Canada or the U.S.? Don't leave yet. The following information may be useful to you. Have you ever imagined that a tax war between the U.S. and Canada could drive up food prices, disrupt the tourism industry, and even push Alaska's economy to the brink of collapse? Trump signed an executive order imposing a 25% tariff on imported goods from Canada. The goods affected include steel, aluminum, and other industrial products. The stated reason is to protect U.S. industries from unfair competition and address issues related to drug smuggling through the northern border. However, these measures are not simple. The U.S. is not only confronting Canada, but now this war has entered a new phase, directly threatening Alaska's economy, which heavily relies on trade routes through Canada. Immediately, Canada responded strongly.
Following a dollar-for-dollar approach, will be imposing, as of 12:01 a.m. tomorrow, March 13, 2025, 25% reciprocal tariffs on an additional $29.8 billion of imports from the United States.
Canada imposed a $30 billion retaliatory tariff on U.S. goods. The affected products range from fruit juice, wine, household goods, to cosmetics and paper products. However, these retaliatory measures aren't stopping at the federal level. Provinces in Canada, including British Columbia, BC, Ontario, and Quebec, have started rolling out their own strategies to counter U.S. tariffs. We must pay particular attention to British Columbia, the largest province on the western side of Canada, which has introduced an extremely bold retaliatory measure, a tariff on U.S. commercial trucks passing through the province to reach Alaska.
It is set to introduce legislation that would allow the province to charge U.S. commercial trucks driving to Alaska through BC. Premier David Eby made the announcement shortly after the U.S. paused tariffs on some Canadian goods.
This could lead to an increase in shipping costs for goods from the U.S. to Alaska, which in turn would raise the prices of essential items like fresh food, cosmetics, and electronics. This is not an easy measure. According to experts, if this measure is enforced, shipping costs will skyrocket, and you can imagine this increase will be passed on to the prices of consumer goods, making life difficult for Alaskan residents, especially those living in remote areas where road delivery is mandatory. To better understand, you need to know that Alaska depends on the Alaska Highway, a route approximately 2,450 kilometers long, running through British Columbia and Yukon, connecting Alaska to the rest of the U.S. Every year, 80% of goods transported from the U.S. to Alaska must pass through these routes. The new tariffs on U.S. trucks will drive transportation costs up significantly, making essential items like fresh vegetables, fresh meat, milk, and other goods much more expensive. The issue doesn't stop at shipping goods. Alaska's tourism industry, a key economic sector for the state, will also be affected. Most cruise ships traveling to Alaska must stop at ports in Canada before continuing their journey.
I think it's his demented way of going, oh, I can negotiate if I put tariffs on things, but I don't support it. And the people don't feel that way with each other. We notice the effects. There's a lot of Canadians that are...
With strong retaliatory measures from Canada, especially British Columbia, Alaska could face an economic crisis. The transportation system, supply chains, and the tourism industry could all be disrupted. The Alaska government needs to work with Canadian leaders to address this issue as soon as possible. Otherwise, Alaska will continue to face severe consequences for prices and the economy in the coming months. Stay tuned to the video, as the upcoming developments will leave you shocked, and you won't want to miss the far-reaching effects of this trade war on the economy and our lives.